If you've ever felt that, if you feel like you're stuck on a treadmill, constantly watching people you care about walk out of your life, I want you to listen closely. This isn't a string of bad luck. It's not that you're cursed or fundamentally broken. What you're experiencing is a pattern, and patterns don't form by accident. They are created by invisible forces, by beliefs, fears, and behaviors that operate just beneath the surface. The good news is that what has been learned can be unlearned. Today, we are going to uncover the hidden reasons you keep losing people, and more importantly, how you can finally break the cycle for good. When this pattern repeats, our minds desperately try to make sense of the pain. The easiest and most common conclusion is to externalize it. We tell ourselves, it was them. They were the problem. They couldn't handle a real connection, or they were emotionally unavailable, or they just didn't see my worth. And while that might feel true in the moment, if that's the story you tell yourself every single time, it's a sign that the common denominator in all these equations is you. Now, that sounds harsh, but please understand, I'm not saying you are the problem. I'm saying you are the one constant in your relational world. The real issue isn't your character. It's the invisible rulebook you're operating from. The subconscious blueprint for relationships that you might have inherited from past hurts or childhood experiences, which keeps leading you to the same frustrating destination. This is actually where we find our power, because if the cycle is something you are unconsciously co-creating, then it is also something you can consciously dismantle. You are not a passive victim of fate in your relationships. You are an active participant. The goal here is not to drown in self-blame, but to step into self-awareness. Understanding the why, the specific hidden dynamics that cause this push and pull, is the master key. It's the first and most crucial step to taking your power back and finally building the secure, lasting connections you truly deserve. Reason 1. The anxious attachment trap. Let's talk about the first hidden reason, which I call the anxious attachment trap. This stems from a deep-seated, often subconscious, fear of abandonment. It's that gnawing feeling that you are inherently at risk of being left, which wires your nervous system to constantly scan for signs of rejection. This isn't just feeling a little sad. It's a state of high alert. You might find yourself needing constant reassurance from your partner or friends, texts throughout the day, frequent validation, and a persistent need to hear everything is okay. When you don't get it in the exact way or time frame you expect, your mind can spiral. You start reading into the smallest things. A period at the end of a text message instead of an exclamation point becomes a sign of anger. A few hours of silence becomes proof they're losing interest. And them making plans with other friends feels like a personal betrayal. Your inner world becomes a minefield of perceived threats, and it's exhausting. Now, here's how this well-intentioned need for security ultimately pushes people away. While you are seeking reassurance to feel safe, the other person on the receiving end often feels an immense and growing pressure. Your need for constant contact and validation can feel suffocating, like they can't have a moment to themselves without being accused of pulling away. They start to feel like they are solely responsible for your emotional state, and that is a heavy burden for anyone to carry. Instead of connecting with you out of joy and desire, they can begin to connect out of obligation and fear of triggering your anxiety. This dynamic drains the spontaneity and lightness from the relationship. The other person starts to feel like they are losing their own identity and freedom within the relationship, and the natural human response to that feeling is to create distance. So, in your desperate attempt to prevent abandonment, you inadvertently create the very dynamic that leads to it, as the other person pulls away to simply breathe. Reason 2. The avoidant wall. On the complete other end of the spectrum is the second reason, the avoidant wall. This pattern is not driven by a fear of abandonment, but by a deep-seated fear of intimacy and enmeshment. For someone with this pattern, true closeness can feel threatening, not comforting. It can feel like losing yourself, like your independence and autonomy are being slowly eroded. So, the primary self-protection strategy is to build emotional walls and maintain a safe distance. You might be highly independent and self-sufficient, often priding yourself on not needing anyone. In relationships, you struggle to express vulnerable emotions or ask for your needs to be met, because that would require admitting a dependency on someone else. The moment a relationship starts to get too deep, or the first sign of conflict arises, your instinct isn't to move closer and talk it out. It's to retreat, to create space, to shut down. The impact this has on the other person is profoundly isolating. They are constantly hitting an invisible barrier. They share something vulnerable and feel they get nothing in return. They try to plan a future and are met with non-committal responses. They try to address a problem in the relationship, and you withdraw, either physically by leaving the room or emotionally by shutting down. From their perspective, they are putting their heart into a one-sided investment. They are pouring energy, love, and vulnerability into the relationship, but it feels like it's disappearing into a void. They start to feel lonely even when they are sitting right next to you. They begin to question their own worth, wondering, why am I not good enough for them to open up to? After repeatedly feeling shut out and unimportant, they are left with no other choice but to protect their own heart by walking away, leaving you alone, which, ironically, is the very outcome your walls were built to prepare for, yet they ultimately help to create. Reason 3. Unconscious self-sabotage. Now, let's talk about one of the most painful patterns, unconscious self-sabotage. This operates from a core belief, often formed from past hurts, that whispers you are not truly worthy of stable, lasting love. It's a profound feeling of being fundamentally unlovable at your core. But the mind craves consistency, so it would rather be right than be happy. To confirm this deep-seated belief, you might subconsciously begin to test the people in your life. You set invisible, impossible to pass trials for them, waiting for them to fail. This looks like picking a fight right after a beautiful, intimate moment, as if the closeness itself was a threat that needed to be neutralized. It's interpreting their simple human error, like forgetting to call when they said they would, as definitive proof that they never really cared in the first place. You find yourself hypervigilant, scanning for the slightest hint of disloyalty or rejection. And when you find it, you feel a strange sense of vindication. See, I knew it. I knew they would leave. The tragic outcome of this self-sabotage is that it manufactures the very rejection you feared. For the other person, this behavior creates an environment of constant drama and walking on eggshells. They never feel secure because they know that any small mistake can be amplified into a catastrophic betrayal of trust. They grow exhausted from the endless need to prove their loyalty and love, a task that feels like filling a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No amount of reassurance is ever enough to quiet the underlying fear. They start to feel that they are being punished for a crime they didn't commit, and the relationship becomes a courtroom instead of a sanctuary. Eventually, the weight of constantly having to prove their worth becomes unbearable. They may leave not because they didn't love you, but because the role they were forced into, the perpetual defendant, was unsustainable and robbed the relationship of all its joy and trust. Reason 4. The lack of a soft heart. Poor conflict resolution. The fourth reason people leave has less to do with the conflicts themselves and everything to do with how you handle them. I call this a lack of a soft heart, and it's about poor conflict resolution. Every relationship has disagreements. It's inevitable. But for a connection to survive and grow, those moments need to be navigated with a degree of safety and respect. When this is missing, conflict becomes destructive. This can show up in several ways. Maybe you become immediately defensive, hearing any feedback as a personal attack that must be countered. Perhaps you lead with criticism, using "you always" or "you never" statements that blame and globalize the problem. Or you might be someone who stonewalls, shutting down completely, giving the silent treatment, and withdrawing emotionally because the tension feels too overwhelming. In any case, the underlying goal in the argument shifts from finding a solution to winning the fight or protecting yourself at all costs. When this is your pattern, you make it impossible for the other person to feel safe with you. They learn that bringing up even a minor concern will likely lead to a blow-up, a cold war, or a barrage of counter-accusations. So, they stop bringing things up altogether. They start swallowing their hurts and frustrations, letting them simmer into resentment. The relationship becomes a minefield where honest communication goes to die. The other person feels profoundly unheard and unseen because their attempts to express their experience are met with a wall. They don't feel like a partner. They feel like an adversary. Over time, the emotional bank account of the relationship is drained dry. They will eventually leave not because of the initial disagreements, but because the way you handled those disagreements made them feel alone, attacked, and utterly unsafe in what was supposed to be their safest space. Reason 5. The chameleon effect, losing yourself. The final hidden reason is one that often feels like the safest strategy in the moment, but is ultimately one of the most relationally costly. The chameleon effect. This is the habit of shape-shifting to match the person you're with. It's a survival mechanism, often rooted in the belief that your authentic self is not interesting, likable, or worthy of love on its own. So you become a mirror. You absorb their hobbies, you echo their opinions, you downplay your own needs and passions if they don't align, and you mold your personality to fit what you perceive they want. You might be one person with your romantic partner, a completely different version with your friends, and another still with your family. In each context, you are a performer, carefully editing the script of who you are in hopes of securing your place in their life and avoiding any potential rejection. The critical problem with this is that it builds a relationship on a foundation that isn't real. The other person is not falling in love with or building a friendship with you. They are connecting with a reflection of themselves, a carefully curated persona designed to please them. This creates two inevitable breaking points. The first is your own mounting resentment and exhaustion. The performance is unsustainable. The energy required to constantly monitor and adjust your behavior is immense, and eventually, the mask begins to slip. The second and more devastating point is the other person's feeling of betrayal when they realize they don't know who you truly are. They feel duped, as if the person they invested in was a fiction. The relationship lacks the gritty, beautiful authenticity that comes from two whole individuals choosing each other, differences and all. They may leave not because they dislike your true self, but because they feel the trust has been broken by the facade. They were never given the chance to love the real you, and a connection without authenticity has no core to hold on to when the winds of life inevitably pick up. Now, knowing these patterns can feel heavy, but this is where everything changes. This is your turning point, the moment you move from understanding the problem to actively building the solution. The cycle can be broken, and it starts not with a grand gesture, but with a series of intentional, compassionate choices you make for yourself. The very first step, and perhaps the most crucial, is to practice radical self-awareness. I want you to take a quiet moment and ask yourself, with genuine honesty, which of those 5 reasons made you feel the most seen, or maybe the most uncomfortable? That resonance is your biggest clue. You cannot change a pattern you refuse to see. This isn't about labeling yourself as broken. It's about identifying the specific relational habit that's no longer serving you. It's like realizing you've been navigating with a faulty map. You can't plot a new course until you acknowledge the old one is leading you in circles. Once you have a sense of your primary pattern, the next step is to begin the gentle work of healing your attachment style. The goal here is to move toward what's called a secure attachment, a state where you feel fundamentally worthy of love and believe others are generally reliable and safe. This is a profound shift that starts by understanding your core wounds. Where did that fear of abandonment or that instinct to wall off first come from? This is deep work, and it's why tools like therapy and journaling are so powerful. They provide a safe space to unpack your history and rewire those subconscious beliefs. Learning about attachment theory itself can be incredibly validating. It helps you realize you're not alone, and that these are known, understandable survival strategies that can be unlearned. As you do this internal work, you must also learn the external language of boundaries. So many of us misunderstand boundaries, seeing them as harsh walls we build to keep people out. In reality, they are the very gates that define who can enter our life and how. They are the clear, respectful communication of your needs and limits. For example, instead of silently seething when a friend cancels last minute or blowing up at them, a boundary sounds like, "I feel hurt when we make plans and you cancel at the last minute. In the future, I'd really appreciate a heads up as soon as you know you can't make it." This isn't an ultimatum. It's a statement of what you need to feel respected and valued in the relationship. It's you taking responsibility for your well-being. This leads directly into the fourth step, practicing vulnerable communication, especially during conflict. The goal in a disagreement should never be to win, but to understand and reconnect. This requires a fundamental shift in your language. Swap the critical, globalizing, "You never listen to me," which immediately puts the other person on the defensive, with a vulnerable, "I feel unheard when I'm talking and I see you're on your phone." This simple shift from "you" to "I" changes the entire energy of the conversation. It stops being an accusation and becomes an invitation into your emotional world. It allows you to state your feelings without blaming, creating a space where the other person can actually hear you and respond with empathy instead of defensiveness. Finally, and this is the foundation for all of it, you must make the conscious choice to put yourself first. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming whole. The most magnetic and secure thing you can be in any relationship is authentically, unapologetically you. When you invest in building a life that you genuinely love, pursuing your own hobbies, nurturing your own passions, and honoring your own values, you stop needing other people to complete you. You come to a relationship from a place of fullness, not lack. You are no longer looking for someone to fill a void inside you, but instead, you are inviting them to complement the already beautiful and complete life you have built. This inner security is the ultimate antidote to the patterns of clinging, avoiding, and performing, and it is the key to creating connections that are not based on fear, but on mutual freedom and respect. This journey toward secure, lasting connections is just that, a journey. It won't change overnight, but every single step of awareness you take is a step toward breaking a cycle that no longer serves you. This work is challenging, but it is the most important work you will ever do, because it's about building the love and belonging you truly deserve. I want to hear from you now. This is where our community begins. Did one of these patterns especially hit home for you? Was it the anxious trap, the avoidant wall, the self-sabotage? Let me know in the comments below which one you're committing to work on. Just naming it out loud, even in a comment, is an incredibly brave and powerful first step. And while you're there, look around at the other comments. You will see you are not alone in this. So many of us are on this same path, and there is strength in sharing our stories. If this conversation resonated with you and provided a moment of clarity or hope, please consider paying that forward. Share this video with a friend, a family member, or anyone in your life who you feel might need to hear this message today. You never know whose life you might change simply by starting a compassionate conversation. And if you are ready to continue this work and build a healthier, more confident, and more secure you, I would be honored to have you here as part of this community. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We post new videos every week designed to help you understand yourself, heal your patterns, and create a life filled with the meaningful connections you are worthy of. Thank you for your courage and for spending this time with me.